And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the fastest 2 hours in talk radio. It's the Vinnie Eastwood Show, broadcasting from New Zealand, the perceived least corrupt country in the world. And there's a reason why I use the word perceived, because perception and reality aren't always the same thing. And my very special guest joining me, Her Worship herself. And a lot of people think the title Her Worship doesn't go down with very well with a lot of people, and I disagree. Worships often go down with a lot of people. It's Penny Bright. Welcome to the program.
Oh, hi, Vinny. How are you?
Somewhat fabulous now that you're here. Sorry about the mix-ups there about the timings of today, but anyway, good. I know that you're always busy, and always and busy, both understatements in and of themselves. So there's a couple of topics we wanted to narrow it down to. So first of all, I wanted to talk about the quote-unquote by-election in Northland, about the National versus New Zealand First debacle. Secondly, we'd like to think about the Mangawhai ratepayers meeting where Winston is going to be attending. And then lastly, I'd like to close off by talking about the Wellington super city and the kind of, stoushes that are going on there between the mayors who want the city and the mayors who don't.
Right. Okay. First things first, I believe that this Northland by-election, that's BUY election, otherwise known as the Northland I believe for a number of reasons.
Sorry, you'll have to restate that, Penny. You'll have to restate that. We had a cutout on your audio there for a second.
Oh, okay. I believe that this Northland by-election, that's BUY by-election, or otherwise known as the Northland bribe election, is going to go down in history as quite a yardstick event. And the reason for that is that when Winston Peters storms home on March the 28th, 2005, and helps to take Northland off national, then I believe that John Key, Brand Key, will really go down the gurgler. And the reason for that is that his carefully spin-doctored image of Mr. ex-Wall Street banker, that Mr. Okie Blokey, ordinary guy, New Zealander, was actually punctured majorly when in front of, I think over 1 million people have seen this video clip where our trader, Prime Minister, was trying to be a tradee and he couldn't even bang a nail into a bit of wood. And seriously, I mean, this is the country of New Zealand, proud do-it-yourselfers. Here's the leader of this country of do-it-yourselfers. He can't even bang a single nail into a piece of wood.
That's because he's a pay someone else.
Gets Bronny to get a man in. That raises all sorts of issues, but we won't go there. But, so it's years of carefully crafted spin doctoring where how do you transmogrify this ex-Wall Street banker into Mr. Ordinary Bloke that ordinary people will just want to queue up to shake the hand of. And what you do is you just mix and mingle with as many people as possible and just pretend to be ordinary when, of course, you're from the 1% and you're looking after the interests of the 1%, and it's all as phony as hell. And I think that one tiny little clip, which has had over 1 million views, has really helped puncture that hot air balloon in a way that he'll never get back that perceived credibility that Mr. Popularity once had.
So let me get this straight. He couldn't puncture a piece of wood with a nail, and that punctured his credibility.
Absolutely. Just seeing him try to hammer in a nail when he keeps missing it, and then, of course, what happened was that Winston Peters seized the moment and got a 9-second video clip of him how a real Kiwi bloke hammers in a nail, and that's had over 100,000 hits. And I mean, you compare the two things, but there's been moments in history where there's been certain photos that have absolutely destroyed the political careers of politicians. There was the famous Michael Dukakis photo of him, he was a Democratic presidential candidate back in the 1980s, and he was seen by George Bush Sr. as being soft on war. So there's this picture of Michael Dukakis in a tank, but it was regarded as one of the 10 biggest PR failures of all time. So, so I think that this nailing, this nail fail will go down in history as John Key's Michael Dukakis moment.
Well, let's hope his political campaign Dukakis it.
Indeed. Yes, well, I think that's well underway. I mean, see, John Key made so light of, Winston then have a dog show, and next month, oh my God, he's leading in the polls, and talk about the panic button. So it would appear that at the end of the day, New Zealand part-time Prime Minister John Key is not anywhere near as comfortable and relaxed as he might have been, because he's cutting short his state visit to Japan in order to campaign for national in the Northland by-election. And that raises all sorts of issues as well, because there's a whole flood of National Party ministers and MPs flooding up to Northland, taking their flash limousines on the potholed gravel roads up there. And the question is that how much money is actually being spent and accounted for, because Mark Osborne, the National Party candidate, is only allowed to spend $52,100 on a by-election, including GST. So how is all this National Party support being calculated in an accountable and proper way?
Well, I mentioned in the first hour about how I went to elections.org and I had a look at the donations PDFs from the parties that they put up themselves and sign off and stamp off. United Future got 0 for the year of 2013. Public, private, everything, every kind of donation, 0. Winston Peters, New Zealand First, got like 2,400. And I was like aghast. It's like, whoa, that seems awfully low for an elected party.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we're now looking at expenses for this by-election, but my understanding is the reason why Winston Peters has chosen to stand in Northland is because a lot of apparently former National Party members have asked him to do so. And my understanding is there is a lot of serious discontent and disquiet over why they're having a by-election, which is costing $1 million, why they're having a by-election in the first place, arising from Mike Sabin, the former National Party MP, resigning under very mysterious and murky circumstances.
The official story is, quote, personal reasons. Now, I don't know about you, but whenever somebody says personal reasons, it's reasons they don't want nobody to find out about.
Well, the thing is that, in my view, if you're a public elected representative and suddenly you're out of the house, then people are entitled to know why. And apparently he's faced police investigations for what exactly is not quite clear, but rumours are abounding. But the point is, if he was dodgy, why was he reselected as a candidate? Why was he reselected as a candidate? And I think that's the thing that a lot of National Party people are not, or former National Party people are not happy about with Northland, that if there were all these allegations floating around, he wasn't basically fit for duty and he should never have been reselected as a candidate. Allegations?
Allegations about what? Do you know any rumours? Is there any public speculation? Anybody who thinks they might know?
Yeah, there is. There's some serious public suppression orders there. But, hopefully it will come to light, soon. But, it's.
Oh, but you can't say because of suppression orders.
It's not a good look at all. But the thing is that what cracks me up is that after part-time Prime Minister John Key saying that Winston didn't have a show, next minute, the message is certainly being given to the National Party. Well, the fact that there's a huge public spotlight on Northland now, and now there's bridges and infrastructure and all manner of things being promised or bribes out there.
Can we put two things? Two things down here. I mean, it has been a National Party electorate for 55 years, and and the election bribe, almost the carte blanche bribe, was 10 bridges being upgraded from a 1-lane to a 2-lane. And then after Winston gets high in the polls, Mr. Key says, "Oh well, we won't upgrade the bridges then if Winston wins." It's kind of like you're holding the region to ransom if you want a bribe. Oh, you don't like my bribe? Well, how about some threats then, eh? How'd you like that?
Okay, well the thing is this, that bribery under New Zealand electoral law is an offence, okay? And this is what I believe is a bribe, in my view. Okay, this is a direct quote from Mark Osborne, as reported in an article, just bear with me, on the 13th of March this year, where it is stated, Mark Osborne, who has risen from electorate treasurer, so he was Mike Sabin's electorate treasurer, which raises the questions, well, how much did he really know about Mike Sabin and why he had to resign? But anyway, Osborne, who has risen from electorate treasurer to potential MP in just weeks, even warned a flagship national roading project to extend State Highway 1 as a motorway further into Northland could be derailed if Peters beat him. Quote, "If the people of Northland want the Puhoi to Wellsford motorway extension, which is vital to open up Northland to our biggest market, if we want that, there's only one choice, and that's to vote for me," Osborne said. Well, with all due respect, when you look at the underpinning Electoral Act, okay, Section 216 is what deals with, let me see if I can find it, Section 216 deals with bribery. And I'm just trying to get it up on my screen.
While you're looking for that, I also wanted to note as well that when this election's happening, it kind of makes a bit of a pivotal move, and it's got the country sort of focused on it. And not to mention the fact that these new roading highway projects and everything, Northland mayors have been requesting for years, and are just now getting to the consent process and everything with them anyway. So they're using this pivotal moment to try and jockey people for things that were probably going to happen pretty soon anyhow.
Well, there's all that, but I found it now. Okay, so New Zealand Electoral Act 1993, Section 216, bribery, subsection 1. Every person is guilty of a corrupt practice who commits the offence of bribery. Subsection 3, for the purposes of this section, A, advances or pays or causes to be paid any money to or to the use of any other person with the intent that that money or... I read the wrong bit. Sorry, 3. For the purpose of this section, A, references to giving money shall include references to giving, lending, agreeing to give or lend, offering, promising to procure or endeavour to procure any money or valuable consideration. Everybody's talking about bribes in Northland, but it's no point howling at the moon, Vinny. As you know, nothing happens until you put something into a sausage machine with an outcome. I'm waiting this afternoon for a reply from the Electoral Commission to find out to whom exactly I make a formal complaint against national candidate for Northland, Mark Osborne, for alleged bribery under Section 216 of the Electoral Act.
And that's on the basis...
Put it in the... Yep.
And that's on the basis of his election promises about the bridges and the highways, etc.?
Well, no, it's where I think a line is crossed is basically, if this is a candidate who, if elected, will be part of the government, they hold the Treasury purse strings. And so the concept that if you don't vote for me, then you won't get this, then I believe that is absolutely crossing a line. That is crossing a line, in my view. Anyway, I believe it needs to be tested, and the way to test it is to actually make a formal complaint, and you will remember that I was one of the 3 people that made a complaint against John Banks to the police over alleged, basically, electoral fraud, and that started off a process, and the end of it was that John Banks ended up having to resign from Parliament. So, but had I and 2 others not initiated that process, there never would have been an outcome. You can't just whine about stuff. You need to actually get it into a process with an outcome. And I'm getting directly from the horse's mouth, which is the Electoral Commission, the proper process to follow. To whom do I make the complaint? Is it the police? Is it the Electoral Commission? Because the Act is not clear. So I get that from the horse's mouth by 5 o'clock today, and tomorrow I hope to initiate a formal complaints process.
Well, I see it more along the lines of a game of gridiron, actually, Penny. You're the quarterback. You're the one who actually has to make the play. Everybody else is here to basically keep others off your back so that you can take your shot. Penny, I'm sorry, we're going to have to go to break right about now. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Vinnie Eastwood Show, the show with the extraordinarily loud outro music. And we'll be right back after the break with veteran activist, Her Worship, Penny Bloody Bright. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinnie Eastwood Show. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? And my very special guest is a PM Bright. And I'm proud to call you that. Welcome back.
Thank you. So, what else do we...
We wanted to encapsulate the last of it. You were reading off the legislation in terms of the bribery. I get that because this is something that I've never actually seen before. Like, I can't remember a single example where somebody would actually come out, offer something, and then say that if you elect somebody else, I'm going to withdraw my offer. Like, they've never explicitly stated that. That's always been kind of like assumed. So the fact that they felt the need to state that, they felt the need to threaten the electorate with some kind of a penalty if they dare vote for somebody else, that's kind of unique. This is dark territory we're getting into.
Well, it's interesting because I've tried Googling and I can't actually come across any previous test cases where anyone in New Zealand has actually made a complaint for alleged bribery in an election and of this form. So, it could be quite an interesting little test case. So I'm really looking forward to getting the clear steer from the Electoral Commission on how to progress this. But, sorry.
As I always say, if nobody's done it before, that's enough reason for me to do it.
Indeed. Yeah, so exciting times, but the key thing here, of course, is that Northland's much bigger than Northland in terms of the political ramifications, and the reason for that is that if or when Winston Peters storms home and takes Northland off national, then the national government will be left with 59 out of 121 MPs, which will make it a lot more difficult for them to get legislation through the House. Because instead of just railroading it through, by having one MP less means it's going to be more difficult for lots of pieces of legislation which don't have the support of the United Future Party or the Māori Party.
Which would be specifically one thing, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, wouldn't it?
Well, actually, it appears that it's not Parliament that has to agree to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. It can just be done through Cabinet, which is outrageous. But in terms of legislation, it seems to be the Resource Management Act or changes to it that National will lose the ability to be able to railroad through if they're one MP down. Well, it's just like when we got when John Banks ended up having to resign from Parliament last year, that the government was hamstrung and they couldn't force through changes to employment legislation to help take away workers' smokers, etc., because they simply didn't have the numbers in the House. They only had 60 MPs they could rely on, and they needed 61. So, I mean, people just need to get it. It's much bigger than Northland, which is why I'm really, really doing everything I can to try to encourage people strategically vote Winston Peters for Northland. And it seems like in New Zealand, the so-called right get strategic voting, like they have done for some time in Epsom, but they haven't really got it as far as the so-called left is concerned. I mean, I got 420 votes in Helensville when I stood against John Key, and all I wanted was the electorate vote, and all the political parties wanted the party vote. So why they didn't just give me the electorate vote, it just proves that they didn't get strategic voting. However, that's another yardstick, I believe, that will be shown by this Northland campaign. It will be the first time the so-called left have got strategic voting. Why would you waste your vote as a Labour Party supporter on Willow Jean Prime, their candidate, although I think the woman's very promising? Why would you waste your vote when you could help absolutely clip the wings of the national government? Give your Labour vote to Winston Peters. Give your Mana Party vote to Winston Peters. Everybody who's got a vote and a brain, vote Winston Peters for Northland. That's my recommendation.
Because Northland currently holds the key to the country to a large degree, at least in that particular way. It's not going to be enough to stop the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which is, oh my God, I can't even... You know, I try to imagine how bad things could possibly be in certain things, Penny, and a lot of the time I'm either right, I'm capable of imagining how bad they are because I assume the worst. In other cases I'm wrong because they're much worse than I could ever possibly imagine.
Well, the thing is that where the people lead, the politicians will follow, and the thing is to keep the pressure on against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's all about corporate control. But what gets me is that in Auckland, the biggest city and now the second least perceived corrupt country in the world, we've been under direct corporate control for 4 years. I mean, you understand it. I've fought against it literally from day one. There's been a tiny handful of us who have fought this corporate takeover, but now I think more people are waking up to it. But we have been under direct corporate control through a corrupt corporate coup, which was when central government railroaded through the Auckland super city forced amalgamation of the Auckland region. That's a reality. But but what's
and now they're doing it to Wellington.
Well, I think that we've managed to really help hit it on the head. I spent days and days and days down in Wellington, like the big Auckland bazooka, who had, I've got facts and evidence and experience that nobody else has, and that's a fact, exposing just what a crock Auckland, the Auckland super city for the 1%, has been for the majority of us. And what was fascinating was I flushed out of Auckland Council this dynamite official information act reply on the 27th of February, 3 days before submissions were closing on the draft Wellington Super City proposal, which provided the evidence that there is no evidence of the purported efficiencies of this forced amalgamation in Auckland. That's a really big deal. There are no Auckland efficiencies. That's just a load of bollocks. And the other thing is that given that the whole purpose of amalgamations is supposed to be for future cost effectiveness, there's been no information provided in Wellington, just like there never was in Auckland. Where do the costs fall now? How much now are council services and regulatory functions actually costing on a line-by-line basis? And nobody has provided that evidence. So unless you know where the costs fall now, what basis, factual basis, do you have to measure any cost effectiveness?
Well,
it's just bollocks.
Well, this is ironically almost word for word what you were saying in the original Super City, because there was no evidence then, and there's no evidence now, and strangely enough, it just keeps getting pushed through. So that leads me to one inescapable conclusion, that somebody has to gain from a Wellington Super City. Who is that has a lot to gain? And who is it that has a lot to lose? I'd wager it's the corporate contractors that have an awful lot to gain, and I'd wager it's all the people who participate in something called democracy have a lot to lose.
Well, it's exactly right. And having been through opposing the Auckland Super City from day one, the play has been basically identical. It's really interesting. What's happened is that you've had mayoral forums, which of course are not a creature of statute under New Zealand law, which have come up with recommendations to help push for this Wellington super city. You've got groups like the New Zealand Council for Infrastructural Development who represent major companies to set up with their snouts in the public trough, bigger contracts for fewer but bigger private contractors, the same people. And what they argue, it's a race to the bottom. What they're arguing is that you need this amalgamation, you need this one voice, which is a crock. Auckland used to have 8 councils, got rid of 7 of them, and we ended up with 1 council, but then we got 7 council-controlled organisations. So we swapped 7 democratically elected councils, warts and all, for 7 undemocratic council-controlled organisations run by unelected boards of business people, unelected CEOs. We don't know where exactly the money's going. We're talking billions here. We don't know exactly where the money's going. Again, it's bigger contracts for fewer but bigger private contractors. Rates have gone up. Debt has gone up. Transparency, democracy and accountability have just fallen away.
You know, anybody who just turned up all of a sudden, they'd say, hey, these guys are setting up a fascist dictatorship.
Well, yeah. Well, look at what they've done. Look at what they tried to do to me. I mean, here's little old me having a go and refusing to budge, making a stand for transparency, and they try to sell my house on me on the basis of a fundamentally flawed judgment that was based on fundamentally flawed evidence, and there'll be a lot more to come on that one because that's a lot of unfinished business. But that's the reality. I'm their biggest pain in the neck because I won't shut up. And that's what they're trying to do, neck stamp me and try and make an example of me in case other people get the Penny Bright disease and actually dispute and refuse to pay their rates, because that's the direct action that you take.
It's kind of like Lou Gehrig's disease. Only one person really gets it, eh?
Well, the thing is that, like I keep saying, in my view, it doesn't take a cast of thousands to make a difference. It's the depth of the stand, not the breadth of the stand. The more, the merrier. But here's me, one person rates revolt, and now we've got this huge public spotlight starting to really look a lot harder at transparency and accountability and democracy under Auckland Council. One guy climbs a kauri tree in West Auckland, and that stops it being cut down. You've got to take the direct action that stuffs up what it is they're trying to do.
And you have to have people see you doing it as well. Because no doubt if that guy in the tree and you over your house being sold by Auckland City Council had received no media coverage of any kind, the likelihood of you pulling off what you needed to and getting the public support you required in order to pull it off wouldn't have existed. And so
no, that's exactly. You need the public. It's court of public opinion. In order to win in the court of law, court of public opinion is really, really important. But I think because Auckland Council's so unpopular anyway, there was, and that was quite a stand to take. I mean, I had all sorts of people saying, oh, Penny, you've done enough, you've made a stand, but, your house is at risk here. And I just thought, stuff this. I mean, I've made a stand for over 7 years on this. I'm not wrong and I'm not backing down. And when it comes to crunch time, that is exactly the time that you have to be absolutely resolute. So here we are, staring at each other, me versus Auckland Council, and basically the council blinked first.
Yeah, and the council was 7 times bigger than it used to be.
Well, that's exactly right, and it's like that. What really gets me is they have a bottomless pit of public money to use against the public and the public interest, and that stinks to high heaven as far as I'm concerned. It's really not okay. Yeah,
and Wellingtonians will enjoy it next. Speaking of which...
Well, no, seriously, I do believe that we actually have actually hit it on the head, because they actually do get it down there. Heaps of them do.
Can I ask, Penny? has the media been covering it though? Like, remember that pivotal point that we just made? Is the media covering the anti-Wellington super city side of things?
There has been, yes, there has been coverage, but of course the thing is that, I mean, Auckland's not up on planet Mars. I mean, there's all sorts of people that are linked from Wellington to Auckland. They have family, friends, and of course, you know, the number of people that think Auckland Council is the best thing since sliced bread, you can probably get them in a telephone box, or one that's big enough to take the
I think you could
contactors.
actually fill a council debating chamber with them.
Well, anyway, but I mean, I think that's made an impression as well, because the more Wellington folk hear about the disaster that the Auckland Super City Council has been, the less they want anything to do with it. And what got me was just how blatant the lies were down in Wellington about the Auckland Super City and their background. I mean, back on the 5th of September 2006, where my good friend, fellow community activist Lisa Prager and myself gate crashed the Auckland Town Hall with an hour's notice because we were told there was a big thing happening there, that 4 of the mayors of Auckland City Council, Manukau City Council, Waitaku City Council, North Shore City Council, basically all ganged up on Mike Lee and the Auckland Regional Council on behalf of big business. They wrote this open letter to then Labour Prime Minister Helen Clark and said, we need to move fast. What we need to do is we need to set up basically the super city. And Lisa and I gate crashed. It was Lisa first off the mark, said, you've got no lawful authority to do this. And we completely disrupted it and closed it down, basically. And that was the first step in the process that they relied upon to get that Super City Council. And Bob Harvey was one of the ringleaders for this failed mayoral coup, as it became known. But he was brought down to the Wairarapa to counter what I'd said as a anti-Super City campaigner, and he was promoted as someone who originally had been opposed to the Super City and allegedly led protest marches against the Super City when he was one of the ringleaders who pushed for the Super City. Blatant lies!
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Well, that's basically, I don't see why it's unbelievable. It's the standard modus operandi as far as my experience is with New Zealand media. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, at the VinnyEastwoodshow.com. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the final segment of the Vinny Eastwood Show, broadcasting live on American Freedom Radio from Tuesday through Friday, 3 till 5 p.m. currently is the live time slot for the New Zealanders. And if you happen to be in the good old USSA, the time is 7 o'clock on the Pacific Coast and 10 till midnight on the Eastern Coast and 9 till 11 Central. Obviously, if you know your US time zones, and for those of you in England, unless you're like the latest late-night dogs I've ever conceived of in my life, you know, it's going to be like 2 a.m. till 4 a.m. for you guys. I'm sorry. That's pretty nasty. But then again, late-night conspiracy theorists kind of go together like rice and beans. My very special guest is Penny Bright, and lastly I wanted to talk about the Mangawhai Ratepayers Association. They've sent me a number of messages. I just haven't been able to get out there, can't afford the gas, but Winston's going out there for an hour-long meeting soon, I hear.
Yes, this Thursday, the 19th of March, from 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock, Winston Peters, he actually made contact with the Mangawhai Residents and Ratepayers Association requesting to meet with them, to hear directly from them. And so this is going to be a very significant meeting, and one way or the other I'm getting up to that meeting, because what's really important is that what happened in Kaipara with this disgraceful Mike Sabin Kaipara District Council Rates Validation Act, what that did, central government trumped in over the top of the Kaipara District Council and basically said that all manner of things were basically okay when they were corrupt. They were shocking. So that's not the purpose of any validation legislation, which arguably could be used to fix up little wee stuff-ups, but, to try and cover up major wrongdoings that cost tens of millions of dollars, it is a disgrace. And what I'm concerned about is that when I eventually get to the High Court applying for a declaratory judgment to check the validity of my rates assessments, notices and invoices, is central government using the precedent set by the Kaipara District Council Rates Validation Act going to pass legislation to put right things that Auckland Council have allegedly done wrong that affect every single residential ratepayer in the entire Auckland region? It's a big deal.
I think that, of course, the media might be there, but man, do I sound like a broken record here by saying that when the media turn up, they often don't show what's being said? I mean, number one, they've got about a 30-second to a 90-second tops item for a news story, so they can't exactly show everybody everything that was said. But number two, it's a question of what you omit and what you cover. Are you covering the most important things, the most important details, or are you glossing over it with fluff with a he said, she said puff piece?
Well, that's true. To give credit where it's due, who's been doing a good job is Claire Swinney. She's been filming meetings that have taken place up in the Northland by-election, and hopefully Claire will be there. I'll need to send a message just to double check, but hopefully we will have alternative media there.
Do you know if
to actually capture it?
Do you know if Claire's actually been uploading those to a YouTube channel? Because if you don't have an official YouTube channel, you have to kind of upload it in 15-minute segments, and that can be pretty difficult. So if you see her there, just let her know that I'll upload all of her public meetings and everything to my channel for her for free if she wants.
Oh, that's very good. Well, what might be a good idea is if we just sort of swap details there. But I've just discovered, oh my God, get a load of this. This is a big deal. I have had my reply from the Electoral Commission, and it's outrageous. What I did, I sent an email through on Saturday saying that I wish to make a formal complaint against National Northland candidate Mark Osborne for alleged bribery arising from reported statements he has made to the effect that Northland electors will not get the benefits of more money spent on roading or the like unless they vote for him. I believe that this is in breach of Section 216 of the Electoral Act 1993, and I want to know to whom and the proper process to follow in order to make a formal complaint. Please provide this information at your earliest available opportunity. This is their reply. Dear Ms. Bright, I refer to your complaint. I haven't made a bloody complaint. I'm asking, to whom do I make a complaint? Anyway, I refer to your complaint with regard to the Northland by-election candidate Mark Osborne's comments concerning spending on Northland roading amounting to bribery under the Electoral Act 1993. All parties and candidates contesting an election or by-election are likely to promise different policies and spending priorities in order to persuade electors to vote for them. This allows electors the chance to consider the merits of each party or candidate before voting and will not generally constitute bribery under the Act. The Commission has considered your complaint, which I haven't even made yet, and does not consider that Mark Osborne's statements with regard to spending or lack of spending on Northland roads amounts to bribery under Section 216 of the Electoral Act. I didn't provide one skerrick of evidence to support my complaint, which I haven't yet made. What sort of cover-up, dodgy, bloody bollocks is this?
The kind you're used to and you see happening every single time you question anybody in this government about corrupt practices that they're probably behind and benefiting from and protecting some scumbag.
Well, I mean, I'm going to send that far and wide. I mean, you do appreciate that there's a difference between trying to get it clear to whom I make a complaint. Well, their reply shows that it is the Electoral Commission to whom I make a complaint. I hadn't made a complaint. I was trying to make it clear to whom do I make a complaint. Unbelievable. I'll have fun with this.
It's, well...
That's great news. The first to hear it.
You can almost tell by how fast they try to pass the buck, how much of a buck they give about your complaint.
Well, the thing is that, I should be sending that one far and wide. That's outrageous. I mean, I just made a generalised statement. I didn't provide any evidence, which you would expect to do. I mean, this is the direct quote that I read you from the newspaper, and everyone's talking about Northland bribes, and this is how they deal with it in supposedly the second least corrupt country in the world? Give me a break.
It's always this way. No, it's not our problem. It's not our problem. Hold on a second. I'm just drawing a little bit of a line of conspiracy theorist suspicion here. Do you reckon the GCSB gave them a little document and said, by the way, she's going to shift you something about bribery and corruption, and this is the section she's probably going to use and whatever, because we were listening to her phone calls?
No, because I'd already spelt that out in my email to them. Because what I've learned, this is a handy hint for people, if you want to know the process to deal with something, go to source. If you want to know how to is there a complaints process or whatever, go to whoever it is that you want to make a complaint. I mean, they have not handled this in a proper way at all, in my view. But anyway, I'll be sending that far and wide because I just think that's an absolute disgrace. Maybe what I should do is, if the Electoral Commission aren't even, they're obviously not taking this in any way in a serious form, or maybe I'll just go straight to the cops. And I mean, again, it's each time you go somewhere and put something in a sausage machine, it helps to expose who is or isn't doing their job. But that's outrageous.
Do you remember how long it took you, how many complaints were laid about John Banks and John Key over the years about certain things that they'd done, and the bounce process that you go from the cops, the Electoral Commission, to the Ombudsman, to the so on and so forth, and it's this kind of it's almost like a ring of protection, like they circle the wagons around these people.
Well, that's why it was so significant when Graham McCready took the private prosecution after the police dropped the ball and Graham picked it up. And the outcome that resulted in John Banks resigning from Parliament, it showed, for a change, ministers of the Crown are not a protected species.
However,
I mean, you remember...
he did then appeal and won his appeal, but that just means he has to be retrialled, and I'm wondering how much that's going to take out of Graham. I mean, considering what the first one...
it's out of Graham's hands.
Okay.
It's out of Graham's hands, because what happened was that then the Solicitor General picked it up. But the thing is, and it's in the hands of the Solicitor General, I mean, there's been other developments which, to be honest, because I've been so flat out with other stuff, I haven't quite got my head around it. But in terms of... Can
we trust this Solicitor General? Because I remember, what was it, the last Solicitor General rocked Vince Seamer around rather maliciously?
Sure, but again, it's all about that public spotlight, in my view. And I mean, I think that dear old Banksy, where he stuffed it up for himself, being on Campbell Live, saying he couldn't remember going on a helicopter to the biggest mansion in New Zealand to meet the biggest German in New Zealand. I mean, people just thought, what? Hello, it was just defied credibility and all these brain fades, etc. What sort of way is that to run a country?
It's a corrupt way to run a country. That's a very loud song. Well, thank you very much, Penny Bright, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. Those of you who tune in on the live streams, please encourage your friends, encourage your family, share it out on Facebook and everything. Search Vinnie Eastwood on Facebook. Go to my Facebook page there, give it a like. There's Facebook groups and everything, and one group under Vinnie Eastwood that says only join if you love it. If you join that, you will get messages from me every time I upload a new archive, and some people don't like those Facebook blob-uppy things, so don't worry about that. Just join the Vinnie Eastwood Show group or like us on Facebook, and you should have access to the archives as they come to you. And also just bear in mind, this is a listener-supported broadcast proudly, and since 2010 we've been trying to deliver regular shows to you, and been succeeding for the most part. So thank you so much for your support.
I believe that this Northland by-election, that's B-U-Y, by-election, or otherwise known as the Northland bribe election, is going to go down in history as quite a yardstick event. And the reason for that is that when Winston Peters storms home on March the 28th, 2005, and helps to take Northland off national, then I believe that John Key, Brand Key, will really go down the gurgler. And the reason for that is that his carefully spin-doctored image of Mr. ex-Wall Street banker, that Mr. Okie Blokey, ordinary guy, New Zealander, was actually punctured majorly when in front of, I think over 1 million people have seen this video clip where our trader, Prime Minister, was trying to be a tradee and he couldn't even bang a nail into a bit of where he once had.
So let me get this straight. He couldn't puncture a piece of wood with a nail and that punctured his credibility.
Absolutely. Just seeing him try to hammer in a nail when he keeps missing it. And then, of course, what happened was that Winston Peters seized the moment and got a 9-second video clip of him, how a real Kiwi bloke hammers in a nail, and that's had over 100,000 hits. And, I mean, you compare the two things, but there's been moments in history where there's been certain photos that have absolutely destroyed the political careers of politicians. There was the famous Michael Dukakis photo of him, he was a Democratic presidential candidate back in the 1980s, and he was seen by George Bush Sr. as being soft on war. So there's this picture of Michael Dukakis in a tank, but it was regarded as one of the big, 10 biggest PR failures of all time. So, so I think that this nailing, this nail fail will go wood. And seriously, I mean, this is the country of New Zealand, proud do-it-yourselfers. Here's the leader of this country of do-it-yourselfers. He can't even bang a single nail into a piece of wood.
That's because he's a pay someone else.
Get Bronny to get a man in. That raises all sorts of issues, but we won't go there. But, so it's years of carefully crafted spin doctoring where how do you transmogrify this ex-Wall Street banker into Mr. Ordinary bloke that ordinary people will just want to queue up to shake the hand of. And what you do is you just mix and mingle with as many people as possible and just pretend to be ordinary when, of course, you're from the 1% and you're looking after the interests of the 1%, and it's all as phony as hell. And I think that one tiny little clip, which has had over 1 million views, has really helped puncture that hot air balloon in a way that he'll never get back that perceived credibility that Mr. Popular...
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the fastest 2 hours in talk radio. It's the Vinnie Eastwood Show, broadcasting from New Zealand, the perceived least corrupt country in the world. And there's a reason why I use the word perceived, because perception and reality aren't always the same thing. And my very special guest joining me, Her Worship herself. And a lot of people think the title Her Worship doesn't go down very well with a lot of people, and I disagree. Warships often go down with a lot of people. It's Penny Bright. Welcome to the program.
Oh, hi, Vinny. How are you?
Somewhat fabulous now that you're here. Sorry about the mix-up there about the timings of today, but anyway,
all good.
I know that you're always busy, and always and busy, both understatements in and of themselves. So there's a couple of topics we wanted to narrow it down to. So first of all, I wanted to talk about the quote-unquote by-election in Northland, about the National versus New Zealand First debacle. Secondly, we'd like to think about the Mangawhai ratepayers meeting where Winston is going to be attending. And then lastly, I'd like to close off by talking about the Wellington super city and the kind of, stoushes that are going on there between the mayors who want the city and the mayors who don't.
Right. Okay. First things first, I believe that this Northland by-election, that's B-U-Y election, otherwise known as the Northland historic, for a number of reasons.
Sorry, you'll have to restate that, Penny. You'll have to restate that. We had cut out on your audio there for a second.
Oh,